Hey! In this video, I'm going to show you how to redesign this card element so it's a bit more slick, a bit more professional, until it ends up looking something like this. Stick around to the end and I'll show you how to critique your own designs and help you refine them a bit more once you're done with them. Let's go. Hello, I'm Parvin. I'm a digital product designer from London and I teach people how to get better at using Figma and at designing user interfaces. If you're new here, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any new videos. And if you want to follow along with this quick tutorial, there's a link down below in the description to get a copy of the file. Interfaces for apps and websites are always made up of building blocks. One of the most common building blocks you'll see, used again and again on modern websites and app designs, is a card. Now, a card element can come with loads of bells and whistles. It might just have text, or it might have a title, or it might have an image, or actions along the bottom. And by reflecting on and critiquing the design of a component like this, which could have lots of different elements, it's a really great way to train your design eye and refine your design skills. So that's what we're going to do in this video. We're going to start by adding a grid, then adding a partial background, fix up the typography, and lastly, we'll adjust the rating element of the card. And as we go, I'll show you how to use Figma correctly to make this as easy as possible to do. If you want to follow along, I've included a Figma community file. You can get a copy of it so you can follow along with me. So we've got our card, and the first thing we're going to do to start making it look a little bit neater is to add a grid. Now there's a few ways to do grids in Figma. If you're coming from Photoshop or Illustrator, you might be familiar with rulers. So Figma has rulers. If we hit Shift R, we can turn them on and we'll see them on the left and at the top. And then we can just drag grid lines over. And as you'll see, when you get closer to the frame itself, it kind of resets from a negative number over to 0, and then you can kind of measure where you want things to go. Now that's one way to do grids. It's not the easiest, it's not the quickest, it's not the most intuitive, and in Figma there's a much better way to do them. So I'm going to hit Shift R to turn off those rulers and those ruler lines, and then I'm going to click on the frame itself, and over here in the sidebar I'm going to go to Layout Grid. Now this just gives us an all-over grid of 8 pixels. Still not that helpful, but if we click on these 9 little squares on the left of where it says grid, we'll find the layout grid settings. And from here, we can change what type of grid we've got. So we can set it to a column or a row layout grid. We're actually going to add both for this card. So we'll start by adding 4 columns, and then I'm just going to tab over to margin and increase that to 40, and increase the gutter to 40 as well. So the margin is on either side and then gutter is in the middle. We'll add one more layout grid and this time set it to rows. So rows, change that to 2, and again tab over to make the margin 40 and the gutter 40. So now you can see so quickly we've added a bit of organization, a bit of structure. There's been no mathematics, no measuring involved. We've just got our layout grid. So now we can start arranging elements, and you'll see that as long as snapping is turned on, they'll kind of snap into place. So we're going to make that image take up the first column, grab all of the text and move it so it hits the second column, and then just scoot over all of these text boxes so they fit nicely within our grid. I'm going to move that down and move the button in. And then to turn off layout grids for the entire document, you can hit Shift R, sorry, not Shift R, that was rulers. You can hit Shift G, and that will hide the layout grids and turn them back on. You can also, if you've got lots of frames and you only want to do it for one frame, you can use these little eyes here instead of using the shortcut, which does it for the whole document. So now we've got layout grids, the next thing we're going to look at is adding a half background. So to do that, let me turn off my layout grids again, press R to grab a rectangle and drag that over. I know that my card, I think it was 480. Yeah, the height is 480. So I want this background to be 240. And then we can press that button to align it to the bottom. If we press left square bracket, it will send it right to the back. And we're just going to change this color to something slightly off gray, maybe F3. And that gives it kind of a nice division. So we've got the title and the subtitle above, and then all the details below. To make this card stand out, we're not designing it in context right now, which is kind of bad. You should be designing things in context. We're just designing it on the canvas. But to make it pop off the canvas a bit and off whatever background it would be, we're also going to add a couple of effects. So if I click on card in the top left to select the entire frame and then scroll down, and where it says effects, just add a couple and it will default to drop shadow, which is perfect. And we're just going to give the first one 4, 4, 8, and maybe bring that opacity down to 10%. And then we'll do a much bigger one. So maybe 16, 16, 16, and 5. So by layering drop shadows like that, we create a more realistic lighting effect. And this kind of just helps the card overall stand off of the canvas. Next, we're going to look at typography. So right now the typography is a bit of a mess. I'm highlighting all of the type elements. We can see we've got different font families, different sizes, probably different weights. So I'm going to start by selecting all of those things and just changing them to be the same font, same weight, regular, and same size, so 32. And already we can see this feels a lot calmer. There's a lot less going on, a lot less trying to pull for our attention. So to reintroduce some hierarchy back into it, we're just going to start by adding a couple of different font sizes and weights. So I think the title and subtitle can afford to be a bit bigger. So we're going to bump that up to 40 points and then maybe make the title bold as well. I think that's looking a lot better, and we can do the same for maybe book now, make that 40 and bold because that's our call to action. And maybe the £15 could also match that, be 40 and bold. I think that has made the most important things stand out, but there's still a bit too much pulling for our attention. So now let's look at color as a way of reducing hierarchy as well. So the subtitle is maybe a bit too loud. I don't want to make it any smaller because I think it's one of the more important things here and it balances nicely with the title, but maybe to dim attention from it, I'm going to change the color. So I'll click here and we'll change the fill to maybe something like 4 or 5 as a hex code. So in Figma, if you type a number and just press enter, it will repeat that, and that works for combos of numbers. So if you know how hex codes work, you know that each kind of pair of 0 up until F represents an RGB value. So if we just do AB, it will kind of repeat that and we'll get a grayscale value. So I think 5 looked quite good. One thing I think about this is it's a bit, because it's just a grayscale color, it's a bit flat. And what we can do is if we make sure we're in HSB as a color mode, so here we can change from hex to RGB to HSB. HSB is a good one because unlike RGB, which is a bit obtuse to know what all of these values are doing, HSB is a lot more straightforward because H represents the hue. So if we push this over to kind of a purpley blue, given we've got a purple CTA, saturation is how saturated it is. So this is what I mean about it being a bit grayscale. If we increase the saturation, I'm just pressing the up arrow and you can see the little circle is moving towards the saturated color. And then I think maybe we could afford to go even brighter, so maybe even closer to 50. You can see now the difference is quite minimal. So if I type in 0 here, you can see going from that value to a slightly bluer one. It's really subtle, but it makes it just stand out a little bit more. So I'm going to remember that hex code now, 737680, or not remember it, I'm just going to copy it to my clipboard. And these other kind of black text elements, I'm going to also set to that color. And actually, looking at this now, I still think the black is too harsh, so I'm just going to grab those two values and maybe take them down to 222, or maybe even to 3, just to make it a bit more subtle. Yeah, so I think this is feeling a lot more balanced in terms of typography. What we can do now is just Shift G to turn our layout grids back on and just check everything is spaced out still. So what I'm going to do is use these dynamic spacing things to just adjust that. So that's 24. We can change that to maybe 16, maybe 8. Let's align those. Maybe split the difference and go for 12. I'm just going to pick those two, Command Option G to group them in a frame, Command R to rename, call this frame price. And now we can get these 3 elements, and pressing Control Option V to equally distribute the spacing. That's the same as going to this menu and clicking Distribute Vertical Spacing. That will now equally put the same amount of space between them, and we can see that's 24, which I think is right because we've got 24 up here. And we're just going to nudge all three of those up till they hit that grid line there. So just zooming in to check everything is in line with that left grid line, and the top two sections and then the next sections are in line with that top one. Turning off the layout grids, you can see that looks really good. So now let's quickly take a look at the button. I think having done all of this, I think the font size is maybe still a bit too big. So click on that, take that down to 32, so it matches the font sizes we've got here. But I think still keeping it bold is a good idea. Lastly, this is just a normal frame. If I click on it and press Shift A, we'll put it in an auto layout frame, which makes it a lot easier to adjust the spacing on either side of it. So we could go 40 on either side, 20 above and below, and then grab it again and just realign it with our layout grid lines. So the very last thing we're going to do to finish off our card design is to make our reviews line look slightly nicer. So we know it's got an average of 4.5 stars, so we're just going to make a little star shape. So here in my shapes, I'm going to grab the star tool, drag that out and maybe make that 40, Shift 2 zooms to the selection, and I'm just holding down Option and Shift to drag it off to the side, have a gap of 4 there, and then Command D a few times, duplicates it a few times, keeping that spacing. So now if I drag a box over them, I can see that the spacing between all of them is still 4. I'm going to click on the last one and Command D it. This time it stays in line, so 6 and 5 are on top of each other, and then press R to grab a rectangle, drag it over half of that last star, Shift select both of them, and then with my Boolean operations go to subtract selection. So I've now got a half star. So I'm going to choose those first 4 stars and that half star and set the fill to that nice purple we've used for the CTA, and then the little grey star, I'm going to pick a very faint grey, maybe even, let's just set it to E and we'll see how that looks in a second. Now grab a box over all of them, Command Option G to give them a frame, Command R to rename them to stars, and then let's just drag it onto our card and see where it fits. So I'm going to line it up with this line of text, and actually I'll grab this line of text and the stars element, holding Command to select both in the layers panel, Shift A to wrap them in an auto layout frame, and we'll put that horizontal. We can see that that half star hasn't really shown up. I'd forgotten what color our background here was, so I'll make that very slightly darker and take off this average 4.5 asterisk. Don't need that anymore. So delete that, escape to come out of it, Shift Enter to go up a level to select the auto layout frame, and I'm just going to rename that to Review so it looks tidy in our layers panel. And then lastly, we're going to give that a spacing of 12, as I remember that that's the space we had for the price. Yep, that's 12, so keep that as 12 as well so it looks consistent, and just keep it horizontally centered in that auto layout frame. And there we have it. We've got a much nicer looking card. If we think back to what the original one looked like, this is looking so much neater. So hopefully you can see how I've made this look a lot more aligned, a lot more consistent, made better use of hierarchy, and softened the colors in a few places. I've also tried to show you a few different parts of Figma's interface, such as layout grids and auto layout frames. If you don't understand all of these fully, don't worry about it. Figma is simple to get started with and then complex to master. There's a lot of stuff under the hood. But yeah, that is our card design. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have, it would mean the world to me if you tell other people about it. Over this year, I'm going to be starting to grow this YouTube channel. So if you found this useful, the best way to help me out is to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and maybe tell a friend who you think might enjoy it. Thanks so much.